At some point in life, you realize the hardest losses aren't the ones people see, they're the quiet ones, the ones no one ever asks about. If you've ever felt a quiet emptiness you couldn't explain, this story is for you. I'm not here to talk about dramatic heartbreaks or tragic headlines. This isn't a story about loss that arrives suddenly and shatters everything in its path. What I want to talk about are the quieter emotional losses, the kind that arrive slowly, almost politely, and settle in without asking permission. I didn't recognize them at first. They didn't come with tears, they came with silence. It started with small things, moments that used to bring warmth but now felt distant. Conversations that once felt alive began to feel rehearsed. I was still smiling, still showing up, still doing what needed to be done, but something underneath had gone quiet. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just a phase, just getting older, just another adjustment in a long life filled with responsibilities. But the truth was, something had been slipping away, piece by piece, and I hadn't stopped long enough to notice. That was the pain, not sharp, not dramatic, but persistent. The pain of emotional absence. I'd sit at the dinner table, surrounded by people, and feel oddly alone. I'd wake up in the morning with no sense of urgency, but also no sense of excitement. The world kept moving, asking for attention, productivity, opinions, and I kept responding, even as my inner world grew quieter. Many of us in our 40s, 50s, and 60s know this feeling well. We've experienced enough life to know how to survive, how to function, how to carry on, but survival is not the same as feeling alive. And yet, because this kind of loss doesn't announce itself, we rarely talk about it. We don't grieve it. We don't name it. We simply adjust, believing this dullness is the price of maturity. That's when the emotional relief begins, not by fixing anything, but by noticing. One afternoon, I caught myself sitting in complete silence, not scrolling, not listening to anything, not filling the space. And for the first time, I allowed myself to ask a gentle question: what have I been missing? The answer didn't come all at once. It arrived slowly, just like the loss had. I realized I had been giving too much of myself to noise, to expectations, to conversations that required performance instead of presence. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped listening to my own inner rhythm. So I started small. I allowed quiet mornings. I took slower walks. I let moments be empty without rushing to fill them. And something unexpected happened. The silence that once felt heavy began to feel spacious. Instead of absence, it became rest. Instead of loss, it became room. That's when I understood something important. Not all emotional losses are meant to be recovered. Some are invitations to let go of versions of ourselves that no longer fit. We lose the need to impress. We lose the hunger to stay relevant. We lose the urgency to be everywhere, to know everything, to respond to everything. And while that can feel unsettling, it can also be deeply freeing. This stage of life teaches us that meaning doesn't always arrive through accumulation. Sometimes it arrives through subtraction, through choosing less noise, fewer obligations, and more intentional presence. The quiet emotional losses I once feared were actually making space to breathe, space to feel again, space to live with softness instead of strain. That's the meaning I want to leave you with. If you're feeling something you can't quite name, a quiet disconnection, a dull heaviness, a sense that life has grown strangely muted, don't rush to fix it. Sit with it. Listen to it. It may not be asking for more effort, but for more honesty. You haven't lost yourself. You've been shedding what no longer belongs. And in that gentle shedding, there is wisdom, there is peace, there is a quieter, deeper kind of joy waiting, one that doesn't demand attention, but rewards presence. If this story feels familiar, You're not alone. Many of us are walking this quieter path together, learning that not all losses are tragedies, some are transformations. Stay with me. In the moments ahead, we'll continue exploring how these quiet shifts shape a softer, more meaningful way of living, one breath, one moment at a time. There was a time when people needed me, not in a dramatic way, but in the steady, everyday way that gives life structure and meaning. My work mattered. My experience counted. People asked for my opinion, not out of politeness, but because it helped them move forward. My phone rang often, sometimes for advice, sometimes for help, sometimes just because someone wanted to hear my voice. I felt useful, anchored, part of something bigger than myself. And for a long time, I thought that was what life was supposed to feel like. Then, slowly, things changed. Not all at once, not with an announcement or a goodbye party, just quietly. The kids grew up. They didn't need guidance in the same way anymore. They were busy building lives of their own, exactly what I had once hoped for them. At work, new systems appeared. Younger voices filled the room, and meetings no longer invited me in. Decisions were made without my input. The phone rang less. No one ever said, "You're no longer needed." They didn't have to. The silence said it for them. And that loss, the loss of feeling useful, cuts deeper than most people realize. It's not just about missing attention or relevance. It's about identity. For years, maybe decades, being needed was how I measured my worth. I was a provider, a problem solver, a steady presence others could rely on. When that role began to fade, I felt unsteady, like a chair missing one leg. At first, I tried to ignore the pain. I told myself this was just the natural order of things, that I should be grateful, that others had it worse. But pain doesn't disappear just because we minimize it. It waits, quietly, patiently. I found myself waking up with a heaviness I couldn't name. Days felt longer, evenings felt emptier. I began replaying old memories, not because they were better, but because they proved I once mattered. That's when I realized something important. The pain wasn't about no longer being needed by others. It was about no longer knowing how to be needed by myself. That realization didn't fix everything overnight, but it softened something inside me. It gave the pain a direction instead of letting it wander aimlessly. So I slowed down. Instead of fighting the silence, I sat with it. I noticed how much of my life had been shaped around being useful to everyone else and how little space I'd left for myself. I had been so busy fulfilling roles that I'd forgotten how to simply exist without one. That's when emotional relief began, not because the situation changed, but because my relationship with it did. I stopped asking, "Why don't they need me anymore?" and started asking, "What do I need now?" The answers were simple, but not easy. I needed quieter mornings, walks without a destination, conversations without an agenda, time that didn't need to justify itself. At first, this felt uncomfortable, useless even, but slowly something unexpected happened. The silence that once felt like rejection began to feel like space. Space to breathe, space to listen, space to rediscover parts of myself that had been dormant for years. I began to understand a deeper truth, one that only becomes visible later in life. Being needed is not the same as being meaningful. For a long time, my value came from what I provided, but meaning doesn't disappear when usefulness fades. It changes shape. It becomes quieter, deeper, less visible, but no less real. This stage of life asks a different question, not who needs me, but who am I becoming? And that question carries meaning.
I found purpose in smaller things, in presence instead of performance, in being available emotionally, not functionally, in listening more than advising, in offering warmth instead of solutions. I also learned something I wish someone had told me sooner. You don't lose your worth when others stop calling, you reclaim it when you stop waiting for the call. If this watching and feeling that same quiet ache, the sense of being overlooked or replaced or no longer necessary, please hear this clearly. You are not obsolete. You are not invisible. You are not done. You are transitioning. This is the season where life invites you inward, where meaning is no longer loud or public, but personal and grounded, where your presence matters not because it's demanded, but because it's genuine. The loss of feeling useful can feel like an ending, but it can also be the doorway to a different kind of peace, one not tied to productivity or approval, a peace rooted in simply being. If this story feels familiar, you're not alone. Many of us arrive here quietly, carrying stories no one sees, and there is dignity in that quiet. There is wisdom in learning to live without applause. As you move into this next chapter, be gentle with yourself. Let go of the version of you that was always needed and make room for the version that is finally free. And as we continue together, we'll explore what it truly means to live with purpose when the noise fades, how meaning doesn't end when usefulness changes, it simply learns to speak in a softer voice.
Another quiet loss comes with age. Not the kind that makes headlines, not the kind people bring flowers for. It arrives softly. Friends don't always leave because of arguments. There's no final fight, no dramatic goodbye. Sometimes life simply pulls people in different directions, so gently that you don't even notice it happening. Careers change, health shifts, families grow, distance stretches, time passes, and one day, often without warning, you realize something painful and tender at the same time. The people who knew your younger self are no longer around, not because they don't care, not because you failed each other, but because life moved on, quietly. I remember when friendships felt permanent. We talked about someday as if it were guaranteed. We assumed there would always be another coffee, another call, another shared memory waiting just ahead. Back then, time felt generous. But time doesn't ask permission. Years later, I found myself scrolling through old photos, faces I hadn't seen in decades, laughter I could almost hear again, and suddenly it hit me, many of those moments now exist only inside me. That's when the pain truly surfaced. It wasn't loneliness in the traditional sense. I had people around me, family, colleagues, acquaintances, but there was a deeper ache, the realization that fewer people remembered who I used to be, the version of me that was younger, uncertain, hopeful, reckless, becoming. Memories have fewer witnesses now. That realization can feel heavy. It can make you wonder if parts of your life are slowly fading simply because no one else remembers them anymore. And if you're honest, it can feel unfair. For a while, I resisted that feeling. I told myself to stay busy, to keep moving forward. But grief, especially quiet grief, doesn't disappear when ignored. It waits. So, instead, I sat with it. And in that stillness, something softened. I realized that while some friendships don't last forever, what they gave us does. Those people shaped us. They taught us how to listen, how to trust, how to laugh at ourselves. Even if they're no longer present, their influence remains. That understanding brought emotional relief. I stopped seeing these drifting friendships as failures. I began to see them as chapters, complete, meaningful, and true. Not every relationship is meant to walk with us forever. Some are meant to walk with us through something. and there's a quiet grace in accepting that. As we grow older, our circles often grow smaller, but smaller doesn't mean poor. It often means deeper, more intentional, more aligned with who we are now, not who we were. This stage of life invites us to make peace with change, to honor the past without clinging to it, to appreciate the people who remain, and to hold gratitude, not resentment, for those who didn't. And here's the meaning I want to share with you, especially if you've felt this loss too. Just because fewer people remember your story doesn't mean it matters less. Just because memories have fewer witnesses doesn't make them less real. Your life doesn't need an audience to be meaningful. Sometimes growing older means becoming the keeper of your own memories, and that can be a sacred role. You carry stories no one else can tell, lessons earned the hard way, moments of courage that went unseen. And perhaps that's not a loss at all. Perhaps it's an invitation to create new connections, not rushed, not forced, but honest, to show up as you are now, to let friendships be lighter, gentler, and rooted in presence rather than history. If you're watching this and nodding quietly, know this: you're not alone in this feeling. Many of us are walking through this season with a mix of gratitude and grief, learning to hold both at once. Take a moment today to honor someone who once mattered deeply, even if they're no longer part of your daily life. And take another moment to notice who is here now. Life may move on quietly, but it doesn't move on empty. And in the stillness, there is room to breathe, to remember, and to begin again, softly, honestly, and with peace. Have you ever felt lonely even while sitting at a table full of people, laughing, nodding, saying all the right things, and wondered why no one seems to see you anymore? That question stayed with me for a long time. Not loudly, not urgently. It lingered quietly in the background of my life, like a song you can't quite place but somehow recognize. This kind of loneliness is strange. You can be surrounded by people and still feel unseen. And for years, I didn't have words for it. I was doing what many of us do. I smiled politely, I listened carefully, I said, "I'm fine," because that was easier than explaining something I didn't fully understand myself. I kept my losses to myself, not because they weren't real, but because explaining them felt awkward. How do you explain missing something that never officially ended? That's the pain part, the kind that doesn't come with ceremonies or condolences. No one marks it on a calendar. No one asks how you're holding up. It's the quiet loss of closeness that fades slowly, the conversations that become surface level, the friendships that drift without conflict, the version of yourself that used to feel more alive, more connected, more certain. I remember sitting at a family gathering, everyone talking at once, the room full of warmth and noise, and yet I felt separate, like I was watching life through glass. Nothing was wrong, and that's what made it harder. When nothing is wrong, you don't feel allowed to hurt, so you carry it quietly. You tell yourself to be grateful. You remind yourself that others have it worse. You minimize your own feelings until they become small enough to hide. And over time, that hiding becomes a habit. That's when the loneliness deepens, not because you're alone, but because you've stopped letting yourself be seen. The relief didn't come from fixing anything, it came from naming it. One evening, alone in the quiet after a long day, I admitted it out loud. I feel unseen. Saying it didn't solve the problem, but it made something inside me soften. It made the loneliness feel less like a personal failure and more like a human experience. I realized I wasn't broken, I was transitioning. At this stage of life, many of us change faster on the inside than the world around us can keep up with. Our values shift, our tolerance for noise shrinks, our need for depth grows.
And when the outside world continues at the same pace, same conversations, same expectations, it can feel isolating. But isolation isn't always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it's a sign that something is changing. I began to give myself permission to stop performing wellness, to pause before saying I'm fine, to let silence exist without rushing to fill it. I didn't start oversharing, I didn't demand understanding, I simply stopped pretending, and slowly the emotional weight lifted. I learned that some losses don't need explanations, some feelings don't need labels. You're allowed to miss what never had a clear ending. You're allowed to grieve the subtle things, the sense of belonging, the ease of connection, the version of life that once fit better than it does now. That realization opened the door to meaning. This kind of loneliness, as uncomfortable as it is, can become a teacher. It teaches you discernment. It shows you where you've outgrown certain spaces. It invites you to seek connection that feels quieter, truer, more aligned with who you are now. Not more people, but the right moments. Not louder conversations, but honest ones. I started finding comfort in small things: morning light through the window, walks without headphones, conversations with people who didn't need me to explain myself. I discovered that being seen doesn't always mean being fully understood. It often means being accepted without performance. If you're watching this and thinking, that sounds like me, I want you to know something important. You're not alone in this experience. Many people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond carry this quiet loneliness. We just don't talk about it much. You're not weak for feeling it. You're not ungrateful. You're not asking for too much. You're simply listening to a deeper part of yourself. My advice, offered gently from one who's been there, is this: don't rush to explain your loneliness away. Sit with it. Let it speak. Ask what it's protecting, what it's pointing towards. Often it's guiding you back to yourself. And from there, connection begins again. Not forced, not frantic, but natural and steady. If this story resonates with you, consider sharing your own experience in the comments. When did you first notice this quiet kind of loneliness? Your words might help someone else feel less alone. And if you're looking for more gentle reflections like this, stories that move slowly and honestly, subscribe to Simple Earth Studio. We're not here to hide our quiet feelings. We're here to understand them and to find peace within them together.
I want to begin there because that sentence would have changed my life years ago if someone had said it to me gently, without judgment. For a long time, I thought the quiet ache I felt meant something was wrong with me, that I was becoming fragile, that I was losing my edge. But now, looking back with the clarity that only time brings, I see it differently. Quiet emotional losses are part of growing older, not because life becomes empty, but because it becomes more selective. At first, I didn't recognize these losses. There was no clear moment, no dramatic ending. No one walked out the door, no relationship officially ended. Life simply shifted. Conversations grew shorter. Invitations became less frequent. Certain friendships stayed polite but lost their warmth. Some dreams faded, not because they failed, but because they no longer felt true. That's the pain part, the one we rarely talk about. It's confusing because everything still looks fine. You're functioning, you're responsible, you show up. From the outside, there's nothing to explain, but inside you feel a subtle heaviness, especially in quiet moments, early mornings, long walks, evenings when the noise finally stops and your thoughts begin to speak. And when that feeling shows up, many of us do the same thing. We minimize it. I shouldn't feel this way. I have so much to be grateful for. Others have it worse. So we stay silent, we smile politely, we say, I'm fine, because explaining feels awkward. How do you explain missing something that never officially ended? How do you grieve a version of life that simply slipped away? I remember sitting at the kitchen table one evening, long after dinner had ended, staring at nothing in particular. The house was quiet, peaceful even, and yet I felt an ache I couldn't name. Not loneliness in the traditional sense, not sadness, just absence. That was when I realized something important. Not all loss is loss. Some losses whisper. Some losses arrive disguised as maturity. Some losses come with age, not as punishment, but as an invitation. That understanding brought the first sense of emotional relief. I began to stop fighting with it. I stopped telling myself to get over it. Instead, I let myself acknowledge the truth. Parts of my life were falling away, and it was okay to feel something about it. I wasn't broken, I was changing. And with that acceptance, something softened inside me. I started noticing that what I was losing made space for something else. Quieter mornings, fewer obligations, less need to prove myself, fewer conversations that drained me. Life wasn't shrinking, it was refining. This is the meaning we often miss. As we grow older, we don't need as much noise. We don't need as many opinions. We don't need to be everywhere or everything. Our hearts become more selective, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. We begin to choose depth over volume, peace over performance, presence over productivity. That selectiveness can feel lonely at first, especially if you're used to a full calendar or constant connection. But it's not emptiness, it's discernment. It's your inner life saying, I know what matters now. And here's the advice I wish I had trusted sooner. Don't rush to replace what you've quietly lost. Sit with it. Listen to it. Ask yourself what your heart is protecting now. Ask what kind of life you're being invited into, one with fewer distractions and more truth, one where you don't have to explain yourself as much, one where silence feels safe. If you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond, and this resonates with you, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not becoming weaker, you're becoming more honest, more intentional, more aligned with who you are now, not who you were expected to be. Quiet emotional losses are not signs of failure, they're signs of growth. They show you what no longer fits, and they gently guide you toward what might. So be kind to yourself in this season. Allow the quiet, let go without rushing to fill the space. Trust that selectiveness is not loss, it's clarity. And if something inside you felt familiar while listening to this, you're not alone. Many of us are walking this path quietly, learning how to carry less and live more gently. I didn't learn this lesson quickly. I learned it slowly, the way life teaches the most important things, through small moments, quiet disappointments, and long stretches of reflection that arrive when the noise finally fades. For most of my adult life, I was needed at work, at home, in conversations, in decisions. People came to me for answers, for reassurance, for solutions, and I didn't question it. Being needed felt natural. It gave shape to my days and meaning to my efforts. I mattered because I was useful. Then, without any dramatic moment to mark the change, that need began to soften. Fewer calls, fewer urgent questions, more moments where I realized decisions had already been made without me. That's where the pain begins. Not sharp pain, not grief anyone else could see, just a quiet ache that settles in when you realize your role is changing and no one told you how to prepare for it. I smiled through it, told myself this was normal, that it didn't bother me, but at night, when the world grew quiet, the question would return, do I still matter the way I used to? That question can be frightening, especially in this stage of life, because it touches something deep, our sense of worth. We live in a culture that praises speed, productivity, relevance. When you're no longer at the center of that motion, it can feel like you're fading. At first, I tried to fix it. I stayed busy. I stayed visible. I stayed available even when I was tired. I told myself I was adapting, but in truth, I was chasing relevance. And chasing relevance is exhausting because it never lets you rest. There's always someone faster, younger, louder, and no matter how hard you try, time keeps moving. The emotional relief didn't come from winning that race. It came the moment I stopped running. One afternoon, sitting alone with no agenda and nowhere to be, I felt something unfamiliar: space. At first, it scared me. Space can feel like emptiness when you're not used to it. But as I stayed with it, I realized it wasn't empty at all. It was quiet. And in that quiet, I heard something honest. Here's what I learned, slowly. You don't need to replace what you lost. Some roles are meant to end. Some versions of you did their job beautifully and deserve to rest. Replacing them only delays the grief you need to feel and the growth waiting on the other side. Loss isn't always a sign that something went wrong. Sometimes it's simply a sign that something is complete. You don't need to chase relevance. Relevance is temporary by nature. It belongs to trends, to moments, to seasons that come and go. Meaning lasts longer. Meaning grows deeper with time, and meaning often lives in places that don't demand attention. Quiet mornings, thoughtful conversations, moments of presence that no one applauds. You don't need to prove you still matter. This was the hardest truth for me to accept because proving had become second nature. But worth that needs constant proof is fragile. Real value doesn't shout. It doesn't compete. It doesn't need to be measured every day. Your value didn't disappear. It simply changed its shape. It moved inward. It softened. It became less about doing and more about being. I began to notice that I mattered differently now. I mattered in how I listened instead of how quickly I answered, in how I stayed calm instead of how hard I pushed, in how I chose peace over performance. And that's when the deeper meaning revealed itself. Sometimes being needed less is an invitation to need yourself more, to finally listen to your body instead of overriding it, to honor your own thoughts instead of dismissing them, to care for your inner life, the part of you that waited patiently while you were busy taking care of everyone else. Needing yourself doesn't mean isolating. It means integrating. It means becoming whole in a way you couldn't when your worth depended on constant demand. This stage of life isn't about convincing others anymore. It's about aligning with yourself. So if you're between 40 and 70, you've lived enough to know that louder isn't better, faster isn't happier, and being endlessly needed doesn't guarantee fulfillment. What does bring peace is knowing who you are without an audience. So here's my gentle advice offered from one experienced soul to another. Let go of what no longer asks for you. Stop chasing the version of yourself the world once applauded. Begin tending to the person you are now. Measure your worth by how deeply you breathe, how honestly you live, and how kindly you speak to yourself when no one is listening. You still matter, not because you're needed, but because you're alive, aware, and choosing to live with intention. And that kind of value doesn't fade, it deepens. If this reflection resonated with you, let it sit quietly for a while. You don't need to act on it today. Awareness is enough.
And if you're looking for more gentle reflections like this, stories that honor growth, aging, and inner peace, you're always welcome here at Simple Earth Studio. We're not here to chase relevance. We're here to rediscover meaning.
If you've been feeling a quiet sadness you can't quite explain, stay with me for a moment. You're not broken, and you're not alone. It took me years to understand that some of the deepest losses in life arrive without noise. No clear ending, no moment where you can point and say, that's when it happened. They slip in quietly, between conversations, between seasons, between who you were and who you're becoming. That was the pain for me. I didn't lose people in dramatic ways. I lost closeness. I lost roles that once defined me. I lost a sense of being needed all the time. And for a long while, I assumed something was wrong with me for feeling the weight of it. After all, my life looked full. From the outside, everything seemed fine. But quiet, emotional losses teach us something important. Not everything meaningful is loud. Not everything valuable is visible. And not every loss means something is wrong with you. When I finally allowed myself to see those losses for what they were, not failures, not weaknesses, but transitions, something inside me softened. I stopped fighting the sadness. I stopped rushing to fill the space. Instead, I let it be there. And slowly, that space began to change. It became room to breathe. Mornings felt less rushed. Evenings felt gentler. I noticed small things again. The way light moved across the floor, the comfort of sitting in silence without needing to explain myself to anyone. The losses hadn't emptied my life. They had cleared it. That's where the emotional relief came in. Some losses create space, space for peace, space for reflection, space for a different kind of purpose. Purpose no longer meant doing more or proving anything. It meant being present. It meant choosing conversations that felt real. It meant honoring my energy instead of spending it everywhere out of habit. And the meaning? It came quietly too. Growing older isn't about holding on to everything. It's about learning what to release with grace. The things that fall away make room for something truer, something that fits who you are now, not who you used to be. If this video spoke to you, I invite you to share your own quiet emotional loss in the comments below. Not to fix it, not to explain it perfectly, just to name it. Someone reading your words might feel less alone tonight. And if you value stories like this, slow, honest, and human, consider subscribing to Simple Earth Studio. We don't rush here. We reflect, we breathe, and we remember what truly matters.